Today, I'm going to walk through a request actually that came through on a comment for another video, how to get started with mining Bitcoin, mining Ethereum, mining cryptocurrency in general. Now, in this video, I'm not going to jump into why you would want to do this, maybe a tiny bit at the end, but what I want to do is start at the very beginning. What kinds of things do you need to consider in order to even get started? So a few notes here. One, you're going to need a lot of computer components, a lot of hardware, right? You're basically building a computer from scratch, but not just building a computer from scratch, you're building one that needs to have a lot of power. And this is going to mean buying some components that aren't necessarily made by the big boys, right? They're made by independent third parties. You have to buy them off Amazon, eBay, etc. And the failure rate on those things just, I found, is questionable at best. Second thing is, it's going to be expensive to get started. Even buying used video cards, they're not going to be as efficient. And then also, even a used video card, if you get a great deal on it, $100, right? And you're going to need, if you want to actually do this right, 5 or 6 of them, at least. So make sure that you're ready for that. Make sure that you've got a little bit of funds set aside. And let's get started on some of the decisions that I've made here and why I made those decisions so that you know where to properly spend your money so you're not wasting the money. So let's start at the beginning here. You're going to need a motherboard. So what I've actually done is I have 2 different motherboard options, and I'll explain sort of the logic behind these 2 different choices. So what we're looking for with a motherboard is a lot of PCIe slots, right? So if you've noticed on some motherboards, you've got the smaller PCIe 1, and then there's the PCIe 16 slot, right? But there's also these older ISA slots on some of the older motherboards. So be sure that when you're looking at it, you're looking for the smaller and larger PCIe slots, which you can recognize those because this little divider is towards the front end of the motherboard where the ports are. Now, beyond that, you want to look for the number of them, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 capable here. So you could have 5 video cards. In theory, you could go higher, but we're not going to get into that here. But you could have 5 on this particular motherboard. And this one's a AMD, an older ASRock motherboard. And then we have another ASRock motherboard here with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 slots. You could have, in theory, 6 different video cards running on this Intel board here. So both of these are manufactured by ASRock. Is there a reason that I chose to buy ASRock? Not really, beyond the price, right? I bought this one quite a few years ago, and it was very inexpensive for having 6 slots. It was built specifically for Bitcoin mining back when you could actually basically mine Bitcoin on your computer at home. Note that even though I'm saying that this video is about Bitcoin mining, you don't mine Bitcoin on computers that you can build at home anymore. You do those with specialized components that you can buy from China. And honestly, I wouldn't recommend it. So what we're going to talk about is mining alternate coins using GPUs, using CPUs, using stuff that you could still purchase, and then you would sell those alternate coins for Bitcoin. Like, stability is the #1 thing you want to focus on. You want to undervolt, you want to underclock, you want to make sure that whatever you do, you're running this machine as close to 100% of the time as possible. And this is where I start to feel the pain of data centers trying to keep their machines up and running, because you'll find that sometimes it's a video card that just doesn't want to play nicely, or sometimes it's changing out the slots that you're using for the video cards. Either way, stability is the #1 thing. And I've found that these older AMD FM2 88X Extreme boards, really cheap. The CPU in here, it's like a $2 CPU, or I guess maybe it was about a $5 or $8 CPU. Some dual core, older, maybe Sempron. Just look for the type of chipset, FM versus the AM platform, and get the cheapest dual core that you can find there. Because you want to go for low power and inexpensive for the CPU. CPU is not going to matter at all when it comes to mining, unless you're mining very specific coins, and in that case, you're in a different ballpark. We're going to talk about GPU here. Additionally, a couple sticks of DDR3 memory. cheap, inexpensive, you probably want about 8 gigabytes. I've gotten away with 4 sometimes. You have to just use more swap space on your disk drive, which I prefer a smaller SSD, 120, 64 gigabytes. You don't need anything crazy. Just big enough to make sure that the operating system plus some software will run on it, and some log files if you want to be able to figure out why your machine crashed. So that's what we're looking at here. So inexpensive motherboard, inexpensive drive, inexpensive CPU, inexpensive memory. Where does the expensive part come into play? And actually, inexpensive case as well. I've got one I even made myself here. So just take some wood, throw a motherboard in here, right? Your GPU just sits right up here. Boom. Inexpensive, inexpensive, inexpensive. The expensive part comes in these GPUs, right? This is where you can actually, potentially, depending on price fluctuations and everything else, turn a profit. So GPU is where we're going to actually spend the actual cash on building these out. I also did buy a $14 pre-manufactured metal case that I'll play with here in a moment as well, and we'll put that together just to see if it's nice enough to hold the GPU, motherboard, and power supply as easy as possible. The other piece where you will be spending a little bit of money is going to be on that power supply as well. So you may even need 2 of them. So this becomes an interesting sort of math problem, right? Okay, I've got 5 slots available. Each GPU is going to be taking, let's just say, 100 to 125 watts, right? And I'll talk about the brand and what choices you want to make there. But if you've got 5 of them times 100, 125, you're fluctuating in the range of 500 to, let's just say, 700 watts, depending on the type of cards that you get at any moment. Now, that means you could go with 2 500-watt power supplies or a 1,000-watt power supply. You could do even higher-end cards, and you might be pushing 1,000 watts at any period of time. So power supply, very important. GPUs, very important. And then you're going to want to, of course, just make sure that everything else is stable and cheap. All right, so how do we actually fit 5, 6 video cards into these motherboards? You get something which is called a PCIe Express or PCI Express extender. Now these extenders, a few comments here on these. So I've got a couple different brands, a couple different styles, right? The big difference between these two isn't in the way that they function, but in the way that they deliver power to the PCIe slot, right? So what you do with these is you would actually take the video card and install them into this extender, so that now on that little crate that I showed you that I built out, you actually install the cord itself into the motherboard, and all it needs is that 1x speed to actually do the math to basically mine cryptocurrency. But the other requirement you have here is the power delivery, because all GPUs do consume power from the PCI slot, as well as their power adapter or power delivery that they have on the top here. So basically the extender is going to be a failure point. I've found that a good solid 70-80% of the problems that I've had with my machines crashing or not being stable long periods of time, or even my wall of shame up here. This is a Radeon VII or Radeon 7 that blew up from the PCI extender. So there's a $600 mistake right there. So you want to make sure that you're getting high quality PCIe extenders. So look for lots of reviews, look for positive reviews. And the one thing that I've always come to find, the type of connector that you've got here, right? I'll just show the 2 of these, can make a lot of difference in stability. So one, you can see there's the adapter here trying to take this from an old hard drive plug, right, into a SATA power port. So you would connect essentially hard drive level power to GPU level performance and power needs. So essentially I've found some graphics cards, the NVIDIA graphics cards, pull less from the PCIe slot. Not all of them, but the lower end ones. So lower end GPUs, you can get away with this. In fact, I would remove these adapters first thing you do from any one of these extenders and use straight from the power supply into these PCI Express adapters. but I don't like the ones that use the hard drive connectors. What I like is the one that uses the 6-pin. Now this does mean you're going to need bigger, beefier power supplies so that you can run these, because this is the same connector you're going to need for your graphics card as well. So now you have a limited amount of cords going to not only the graphics card, but also to your PCI Express adapter. So you might need 2 higher end power supplies, but the stability on this is going to be, it's going to be just a lot better. And I've found that these, I've just sort of named them the blues, right? That have this different adapter on the end for power. They're stable. They don't. So the last piece here, I'm going to talk about the actual graphics card selection choice. If you can get 5 or 6 of the exact same kind of video card, that's maybe better, right? I've got a lot of hybrid machines. I do this just as a hobby. I do it for fun. So I look for inexpensive, within reason, for the type of machines that I'm building. So my choice right now has been a lot of secondhand 470, so RX 470s, 4 gigabytes, and RX 570s, 4 gigabytes. Now, the reason I'm still using the 4 gigabyte cards, one, a lot of miners are selling them, so they're very inexpensive. I've gotten a ton of these and even use them in gaming as well for $70, $80 off eBay. You just go out and make a lot of offers. The price is creeping up a tiny bit now, but yeah, $70, $80, $90, $100, in that range are pretty good. You can also order them in bulk off of AliExpress and get them for $70 flat, right? Sometimes they don't come with all the DVI connectors. I like to get the ones that have, I'll pay even an extra $10 to have all the actual plugs here, because then if you need to at some point, you could sell them for someone who needs a cheap gaming GPU, especially if it doesn't turn out that you enjoy trying to make a machine run constantly mining cryptocurrency. So the RX 470, 570, these are my choice. And the reason as well for the price, but also performance-wise, they have just enough memory still and probably a year or 2 left in them for mining Ethereum. And the NVIDIA cards just don't mine as many different algorithms. So the NVIDIA cards, they're great at a couple different algorithms, but they're more specialized in a sense for gaming, less hybrid cards that AMD was cranking out that are good at mining and actually really good at mining compute, as well as then they do well in gaming too. So I'm going to say the 470, 570 or the 480, 580, depending on what you can find and what kind of price, these are going to be the sweet spot. Okay, so we covered a lot of hardware here. So I'm going to put all this hardware into a machine, and then we'll start to cover the software side of the equation. Okay, the moment of truth. I've got the machine all put together over here, hooked it into a spare monitor, keyboard, mouse, and I'm going to boot it up and then start to install an operating system. So let's go ahead and see first if it turns on, and then we'll talk a little bit about the software and get that process started. All right, you can see the fan here has its lights on. So that's a good sign. Pretty sure I plugged in the monitor. Make sure it's on. One thing that I didn't do was reset the BIOS on this, so I may need to do that. So when you make a big hardware change, and actually this is sort of living in the world of mining machines, you're resetting the BIOS, which means removing the battery, or using an onboard little switch. Sometimes you have a switch, sometimes you have other pieces, just to be sure that it doesn't have any memory of what the past hardware was. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then we'll try again. Okay, I'm back, and I got it working, of course, as you can see, but after trying switching out the memory, switching out video cards, trying risers, no risers, even swapping out the motherboard for the one that I don't like, because I think that this won't be stable, but for the demonstration purposes of building the machine, it should be fine. I realized that the problem I was running into, I was using a directional cable from the video card to the monitor, and it was reversed. So from HDMI to DVI, but it's actually from DVI to HDMI. So the more you know. All right, now that we've solved that with a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and probably a half an hour of debugging for simply turning a cable around, we can get into getting the software set up on this machine. So first step, I'm gonna go ahead and tell it to boot off of a Windows 10 USB drive and install Windows 10. All right, Windows installation has begun. Now, some people may ask the question, which operating system is going to be best for mining, right? Well, Mac operating system is right out, unless you're doing some very basic mining on maybe CPU coins, or there might be a couple miners out there. The reason why I'm using Windows for this example, there's a lot of software. And with Windows 10, you don't need a license key. You just say, don't have one, and continue on. It does mean some limitations when you actually get the operating system up and running, but you can buy CD keys for $7, $10 online if you really need it, if you need to turn off updates for a period of time, things like that. The reason why I didn't go with Linux in this one, I wanted to make it a little bit more user-friendly, and user-friendly in a sense of not everybody is used to using Linux. Now, if you were going to be running, say, more than 3 or 4 mining machines, I would recommend taking the time to learn the Linux operating system, learn how to remotely manage a computer, and get all of that up and running. But for today, for the purpose of one machine, we'll just go ahead and leverage Windows. All the mining software usually hits Windows first. The drivers are a little bit better overall when it comes to getting the Radeon graphics drivers installed, so it's fairly straightforward. I've leveraged both many times in the past. It really comes down to preference and how far you want to go into the rabbit hole of learning more about the different operating systems. Now, once we actually get Windows up and running, we want to make sure that we get the graphics card, the drivers downloaded straight from AMD's website, or NVIDIA if you're using a graphics card from them. Once we have the graphics updated, we want to make sure to just sort of turn on updates for the operating system for this moment, right? Get it up to date right now, and then go in and tell it to wait at least 30 days for the next update. So you can actually adjust that within Windows settings. Of course, making sure that you have a stable internet connection is going to be important as well. And I've had, for example, nice Linksys USB wireless connection, USB connected wireless, and had them drop out the connection every 2 hours versus some inexpensive little USB plugs that run on older wireless connections, something all the way back to 5 megabits a second, and 100% stable. It doesn't require a lot of bandwidth. Stability is going to be key here. So now we'll go ahead and get Windows up and running, and we'll walk through the different things to start installing from a software standpoint. Okay, we've got the operating system up and running. Now let's start with the software. Step 1, use Internet Explorer to download Google Chrome. We can go ahead and jump over to AMD's website and download the Radeon drivers. What we'll do is we'll just sort of select whatever video card to get the latest one. Yes, yeah, sure, yeah. What you're basically saying is just give me the latest thing we got here. Okay, 64-bit download.
we'll go ahead and save that. Oh my goodness, so many pop-ups. All right, so now what we're gonna do is start downloading the mining software. And you're also going to need, depending on what kind of coin you're using, you're gonna wanna grab the wallet for that as well. So it might be the Ethereum wallet, it might be Zcash, whatever it is you're going for, Monero, all those are very popular. Don't use an online wallet. Yeah, just don't do that. Make sure to download something to a separate machine from your mining machine. Mining machines, just because you're gonna be probably turning off auto updates and doing a bunch of other cool little hacks in time, and probably don't have the best password security, etc. Don't actually put the wallet on this machine. Pick a different one, pick one that's air gapped maybe, right? You only connect it to get to your downloaded cryptocurrency, or get a Ledger Nano, make sure it's a brand new one off the internet from Amazon or something like that, and use that to store your different coins. So definitely go and look into great wallet software. Make sure that you use your own. Okay, so Claymore's Dual Miner. I'm going to use the GitHub link here so that I can go ahead and download that. Everything's running a little bit slow because it's not the fastest internet on this thing, so I'll fast forward through a bit of this, but we're going to download the Radeon drivers, download Google Chrome. We're also going to get Claymore's Dual Miner. In this case, I'm going to use that as my mining software. It's great for AMD. 15 is the latest version. I'll put links to all this in the description of the video. So we'll go ahead and get this started here. The drivers are installing. You see the screen is turning on and off as it gets that process done. What we want to do now is actually start getting ready to begin the mining process, which means finding a mining pool. Now, you can mine pretty much any cryptocurrency by yourself, but I wouldn't recommend it because your chance of finding a share by yourself is very, very low. You join a mining pool, everybody pools together their resources in order to get the solved block of one of these cryptocurrencies, and then everybody shares the reward, which the reward varies per cryptocurrency, but you get a portion of it, it sends it into your offline wallet, and you're good to go. So, what different pools do I like? Well, I've tried quite a few different pools. Sometimes they don't even exist anymore. But you can search online for popular mining pools. One that I'm going to use in this example is Nanopool because it's been around a while, and like I said, stability is key for me. Some of them will spin up, they'll have lower fees, higher fees. Basically, they take a portion of everything that you do in order to run their mining pool. In this case, I'm just going to go for the one that I know has been running for a long time. So let's go ahead and jump over to Nanopool, search for it on Google, and of course you get Nanopool for Ethereum. And what you're going to want to do is basically you don't even need an account for this particular mining pool. What you do is your wallet address from downloading the, say, Ethereum wallet is going to be your username. So when you actually go to fill in the information within Claymore's miner, the username is going to be your wallet name, essentially. So it means that you don't have to actually go and get an account. You don't have to sign up for anything that could potentially be a way for somebody to, once again, steal your cryptocurrency. So what you do is you just get the information here. What I'm going to do is select Help. And within Help, you can get a step-by-step guide on how to set up your miner to work with Nanopool. Now, here's the cool thing. Within the download for Claymore, all right, I figured out the Claymore issue. There's two downloads. One of them has a password, Claymore. The other one does not. So I got that part solved. Using WinRAR as well, rather than the default Windows zip extraction, and then also turning off Windows security. So we got it now. You can see here the folder of all the different files. One of them is named Nanopool. Right? There's a bunch of different pool names within the Claymore actual mining folder. So you can basically have a default setup here for any one of those, and this also gives you an idea of which different mining pools to go out there and actually use. I'm going to go ahead and modify the right-click and edit the Nanopool file, and I'm going to drop in my wallet as well as my own worker name here, and then the other The other settings, what I'll do is I'll publish my settings, the ones that I use on a regular basis, because there's some stuff in here of like fan minimum and all that. You can tweak all these fun things, but the Radeon software handles a lot of that for you, and you can adjust it within that software. A lot of these are more for Linux configuration. So go ahead and do that. All right. Press go. But let's go ahead and finish the drivers, and then we'll get that part going here. So turn off the anonymous usage information. I say do this for everything. In fact, even within Google Chrome, we can skip most of the default configuration here. Go into, here it is. I think it's the little gear icon. Go to more details. Let's see, graphics, advanced, and then all the way at the bottom here. So graphics advanced, and all the way at the bottom, we've got GPU workload. Go ahead and select compute and press OK. Now, if you're going to be using your machine for both mining as well as gaming, you have to flip this back and forth and back and forth. But for these 470 through 590 cards, make sure you're on compute mode. What that'll do is basically restart the drivers. Now, the next thing you want to do within the drivers is tweak it a little bit. So I like to go for not too much noise. By default, your noise and heat are going to be the killer of any profit, as well as also your video cards. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and jump into performance, select tuning, yes, I accept, select manual, and the very first thing that I like to do is select the power tuning and go ahead and turn that power limit. We'll start at 50% down. Just chop that right down, right? That'll be your baseline, and we'll tweak it up from there. What you're looking for when you start to mine is the efficient sort of medium ground between power use and the hash rate, right? So sometimes you drop it all the way down, oh, it's only 10 mega hashes and it's only using 30 watts, great. But let's go ahead and bump it up. You can take 60, 70 watts and actually get back up to around 22, 23 mega hash. So that's gonna be where we adjust it. Okay, the moment of truth. I'm going to go ahead and create a shortcut from my mining folder, right? From the Ethereum Nano Pool link here onto the desktop, so that I can basically just do easy mode here and double click this icon whenever I want to start mining. What I'm doing now is I just double clicked on the configuration or on the bat file here, the link that I created. And you're just going to start to see the miner kick on. Looks like I am authorized. So one thing to note here, 3.59 gigabytes is the current size of the Ethereum DAG file or mining file. What that means is these 4 gigabyte cards are getting close to the max. So I'm going to actually adjust my recommendation here and say 8 gigabytes probably what you're going to want to do, so that you don't run into this problem of not having enough memory on the video card in order to mine the coin that you want to mine. All right. Looks like it's still working here. Getting things up and going. You can press S to sort of get a status update at any point that you want. What we're looking for is a message that the DAG file has been loaded onto the video card. And then we should start to see some mining take place here. It's now up and running. Looks like we got the driver's reset, so I'm gonna go ahead and now start adjusting it. We're getting at about 21.2 mega hash a second. So that's all right. It's about what you can get for a stock RX 470. Apparently this is a RX 480 though, so I must have gotten a good deal on it at some point. Who knows? All right, so what we're going to do now is do some basic adjustments. So within the performance and tuning section of the latest Radeon drivers, so I'm on compute mode, but now what I'm going to start to do is try and balance it out between performance, heat, power usage. So the cool thing is with these Polaris cards, Claymore automatically tells you how much power they're using, but you also get a similar view here within the drivers themselves. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we get a nice happy medium between the amount of hashes we're getting and the power usage. So I'm only going to use power tuning at this point. We can get into voltage a little bit as well. Voltage can crash your card. The power usage usually automatically adjusts everything is needed to just sort of get us into that sweet spot. Plus or minus, you can always do better. You can always tweak it further, but I like to use the power consumption to start. All right. So dropping the power consumption down to -20. Getting the exact same hash rate so far. We could also try dropping the frequency down by, say, 20%. See what happens here. Press S to get your status update. So power usage is down to about 80 watts, and we're still getting about 21 hash per second, mega hash per second. So yeah, pretty good overall. Can try dropping this down. Let's see if we do the -50 on the power limit. See what happens here. Yeah, same result, about 80 watts. So 20% frequency is about 50% power usage. So I could probably even turn that off and get the same result now. About 90 watts, let's see. Actually, we were doing better when we had both combined. So go ahead and turn that back on. We'll drop down to 25% frequency, see what we do here. Okay, now that we're down to 25% frequency, still getting about 21 mega hash, but now we're down to 75 watts of power consumption. Okay, so yeah, it's probably about the sweet spot. -30% on the frequency, -50% on the power limit. We're getting about 75 watts of power consumption. So if you had 5 cards, you're well under that 500 watt limit, which means you could probably pop in 1,000 watt power supply. And I've just got a 500 watt power supply in this thing for testing purposes because I'm using my other ones currently. So looks like overall, 75 watts per card, not bad at all, especially for these used cards. You get them pretty inexpensive. This is a fun way to just play around. So what I'll do, you know what, I might even just create a Google Doc or something along those lines, share it within the notes of this YouTube comment or YouTube video, or maybe just put it into the description, all of the configuration options that I'm using here. It's nothing too crazy, right? Just go in, adjust the power settings, go get your account at Nanopool, for example, or one of the other ones listed within the Claymore miner. A simple Windows install here, and you got a couple other options too. If you get real serious, you could start using some sort of like software to log into the machine, like Parsec or TeamViewer, and actually control it from a different machine. I've also, in limited cases, you got to be careful on the actual little hub here, but you can get those power hubs that you can turn off a computer and turn it on from your phone. So if for some reason it did crash, you turn it off, turn it back on, set the BIOS to actually flick this thing on as soon as the power comes on. It's basically like resume on power loss. And then you can actually reset your miner from anywhere in the world if for some reason you're on vacation and it goes down. If you get paranoid, you can do that. A lot of fun ways to basically control this thing from anywhere. Beyond that, another advantage is you now have a computer running 100% of the time, right? And you could actually leverage the sort of spare processing power to do things like run a network attached storage. So throw a couple hard drives in here and share it across your house. You could run some sort of I guess you could do some sort of a video server or something like that. So a lot of options here, Minecraft server, etc. So think about the expanded possibilities of just having a computer running all the time, but also note it's going to be sucking down power. Your power bill will go up. So just sort of note that one. Beyond that though, hopefully this is a good walkthrough for you.